Hey everybody, it's spooky season again, and what could be scarier than
the devil?
And in that spirit, today I am attempting to make my own home-canned deviled ham. So let's get started. This satanic spread has been a popular cracker topper and the base for many a grandma sandwich for somewhere around 150 years now. And I assume since they're still pumping out these little tins, there must be a cult following out there. Now, let's take a look and see what we've got in here. Isn't that appealing? It smells quite savory. Let's get in there. Got some gelatinous coating on there a little bit. Definitely not the smoothest looking spread. Got some definite grittiness to it. Like a very fine grain. Maybe even a broken emulsion rather than just a fine grind on this. Let's give that a taste. Tastes like nostalgia. Definitely not fine cuisine, at least on its own, right out of the can. It's got a very basic salty pork flavor. So let's take a look at the ingredients. And the first ingredient is, of course, ham, and that is a cured ham, cured with water, salt, and brown sugar. Yeah, very basic. And the second ingredient is seasoning. And two of the spices are actually listed here, which is kind of rare, and those are mustard flour and turmeric. And then you've got the ubiquitous spices, which could be just about anything, but judging by the taste of this, that's just about nothing because this doesn't have a lot of flavor other than salt and pork. But I've got a ham and I've got some spices, so let's see what we can do about making our own possessed paste. Other than morbid curiosity, there are a couple of reasons that I'm doing this recipe today. Firstly, it's October, so if you're watching this as it comes out, I am probably out fishing or hunting, so I need to get a simple recipe out so I can get back out there. Also, I've got at least 3 of these hams in the freezer, and I need to clear out that space for whatever I bring home. So, making them shelf stable by canning them is gonna save me from having to eat ham for the next 3 weeks straight. Now, I've got some mustard powder. This I've just freshly ground myself, so that's gonna be nice and sharp. Got a little turmeric. I'm not gonna go very heavy on that, or this is all gonna be really bright yellow. I don't want to mess around too much with the spices because I want it to keep its ham flavor. There's one thing that I feel I have to do to make this demon dip even a bit more evil. And I'm gonna be haunting it with one of my own ghost peppers from the garden. At least a portion of it, because these guys are genuinely from hell. The main thought I'm thinking with this recipe is that this is gonna become more of a loaf rather than a spread when I cook it. Kind of like the Spam I made a while back, which is an excellent recipe that you should probably check out on the channel. And if it does come out like that, it'll still be pretty good and it'll be a nice shelf-stable product. One thing that might help that is to raise the fat content. This ham comes in at a little bit over 8% fat content, and the deviled ham is 25% fat. So I'm gonna make up that difference by adding in some of my own pork fat here. I got some nice, really fatty pork belly. Actually, this is pretty much 90% fat. So I'll get this off the bone and weigh it up, and then get enough of this pork fat in here to bring that content up to 25%. And then we'll put a really fine grind on this. I'll run it a couple of times through my finest grinding plate. I may even try to emulsify some of that. We'll just see how it looks and go from there. So this is 3,000 grams of ham at 8% fat content, and that is 6.6 pounds if you're following along in the US. And so I need 510 grams of clean pork fat to bring that up to 25% fat content, and that'll be 1.1 pounds. This does have a little bit of meat on it, but other than that, this is almost pure fat. 506, 505, I'm gonna call that good. Not too shabby for a blind estimate. Okay, so we'll get this chunked up, and then we'll break out gnarls and grind this up. I'm gonna get started by running this one pass through my big plate here. This is a 6mm. And then I'll follow that up with a couple of passes at least through this 4.5mm plate. And then I think I'll even take a portion of this and I'll try and emulsify that in the food processor to get a different texture to try out. I've got my seasoning. I've gone with 2 tablespoons of the mustard powder. Those were packed down because it's pretty fluffy. That came out to 20 grams. And then I've got 1 teaspoon of the turmeric because of that powerful yellow color. Don't want to go too heavy. That came out to 2.5 grams. And I decided to throw in a teaspoon of cayenne pepper as well. And that is another 2.5 grams. And I'm going to kind of add this into the bowl as I go on this first grind. And that'll mix in on the consecutive grinds. Wow, about the consistency of power bait now. On most of this, I'm just going to keep it with this fine grind that I got from Gnarls, but a portion of this, I'm going to go further and get it on into Mr. McSlurry here, and I'm going to actually get some emulsification going in a super fine grind as well. And this is also where I'm going to introduce my Hellfire. So to do this, I'm going to work in some batches. You don't want to overfill the pot. This ham was pretty watery and it's ice cold, so I don't know that I'm going to have to add very much ice chips. When you're doing an emulsification like this, you want to keep the temperature down below 52 degrees Fahrenheit. So as the blades heat up the mixture, you generally throw in a few ice chips to actually help it keep moving and keep the temperature down. But I don't know if that's going to be an issue with this pretty wet and cold ham, but we'll just keep an eye on it and see how it goes. It's time to pack the jars with the meat mix today, and these are little half-pint jars I've got. I think they're going to be a pretty good serving. And I have sterilized the jars, and before you say anything in the comment, I do know the rules about sterilizing, but whether I do it or I don't do it, I get comments going both directions. So let's just say I always sterilize my jars because it's easy to do, and at the very least, it's not gonna hurt anything. So, I'm gonna kind of get this in here. I'm gonna pack it. I don't want a lot of air in there. So I'm gonna push it down. Try not to get too much air. I'm definitely gonna get some with this grind here. I'll work it around the edges. I can get a lot of air out of there. I'm not gonna go all the way up to the threads on these because I think these are gonna puff up a bit during cooking. I don't want them pushing the lids off. So I'm gonna leave a good inch, actually more like an inch and a quarter of headspace on these to make up for that puffing. Alright, get that nice and smoothed out. Looks pretty good. Keep going here. Now we're going to be a little more cautious with the hot stuff here. Alright, now we're going to get all the threads cleaned up. Okay, now last thing. I've got just a little bit of white vinegar here. I'm gonna take a paper towel and just hit the rim of these jars right before I put the lid on there. Just to degrease them, and that acidity will help to kill a little bacteria if there's any on there. Not too worried about that in the pressure canner, however, but some grease on there could affect the seal. And it's just moist. You don't want your rim there to get wet before you put the lid on there. Just wipe it off. Get that squeak. Okay, now the lids go on. And the rings. Always make sure you've got nice, perfectly round rings. Just snug them up. Don't really crank down on them. You need the air to escape to create the vacuum, so just snug. And as usual, if any of the rings fight you going on there, just toss that ring out and get you a new one. They're not good forever. Alright, let's get this loaded up. I got a couple inches of water down in the bottom of this. Oh, whatever. We'll just hope for the best with those two up there. I think they'll stay up. There we go. When you're pressure canning, you want to bring it up to temperature until it starts to vent steadily. Then let that vent for 10 minutes before dropping your weight and bringing up the pressure. After the venting, go ahead and drop your weight. And then we're gonna bring the pressure up to 11 pounds for this meat. And we're gonna process these half pints for 75 minutes. And after the processing time is finished, simply turn off the heat and walk away at least until the little plunger falls before you go and try to open that lid. Still pretty hot in there. Oh yeah, still boiling hot. I'm just gonna set these out, let them cool off overnight before I get into these. Well, it ain't pretty, but I could imagine that this is what it looks like inside of those little cans. These have all cooled off, tested my seals. Of course, you always want to store these with the rings off to avoid any false seals. Now it's time to uncork this unholy amalgam and see how we did. All right. Looks a little loafy. Let's check that. Oh, it is pretty soft. Oh, I think we did pretty good on that consistency. Of course, what really matters is the taste. Check out that bite. Not bad. The grind on this is just about right. Pretty good. Now let's check out the spicier one that I put in the food processor. Not too shabby. Ooh, there's that heat. Hold on one second. Check out that bite. Woohoo! Oh. So good. Woo! These both came out really well. The texture of the one that I just ran through the grinder is almost identical to this one. This one's a little mushier. I don't know if there's a little more water in here or what, but very similar as far as the grind goes. And the one that I put in the food processor, just a little bit smoother, but to give the devil his due, the both of these taste much better than this. And it's really gonna depend on the flavor and quality of the ham that you use as far as the results you're gonna get here. But if you do like this, and you are gonna love this. And these are gonna be good on the shelf for at least a year, but probably much more. So when the zombies do attack, if you got this on the shelf, you're gonna be set for a good long time. Thanks for watching.